tells people what you're
Mhm.
doing and how they can get it if they are your ideal audience. So you have a lot to accomplish above the fold. However, most people spend an average of 7 seconds on a website before deciding whether to bounce or buy.
Welcome to the Strategies That Stack podcast. I'm your host, Victoria H. Boyd. I'm a corporate escapee and marketing consultant, and I'm on a mission to help you build a marketing strategy that is so stacked you become absolutely unignorable. Each week, I will bring you real stories, the actual data, and the true strategies that have propelled online creators and entrepreneurs to the top of their industries. So grab your coffee and let's jump in. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Strategies That Stack podcast. I am so excited to be here with one of my good business friends, Sam. Sam is the badass copywriter behind Nomad Copy Agency and Copy on Demand. She helps folks write high converting copy for their services, memberships, and digital products. And I'm so excited. We're going to talk not only about copy, but also her very unique launches for Copy on Demand and how she came up with her unique strategy of launching. So Sam, I'm so excited that you are here. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me how fabulous you are. Because I know, but I want everybody else to know too.
I'm Sam, founder and lead copywriter at Nomad Copy Agency. But no, I called my business Nomad Copy Agency because when I started it, I was full-time nomad. I had been traveling for about 3 years at the time. Met my partner, so now I'm like a half-time nomad. I call myself a slow mad, because usually when I
I
go
love that.
travel, thanks.
Trademark.
Yes, I know. I really should. I wonder if it is trademarked. I need to talk to my trademark attorney.
It's a goodie.
But it is a goodie. Um, but yeah, so I was traveling full time and I was writing copy, and I never wanted it to be a surprise that that was my lifestyle. So I still very much work while I'm traveling. The reason I call myself a slow mat is because I'll post up somewhere for like 3 months at a time. So it's not like I'm in Cancun on vacation. I'm like very much just doing the same thing, but in a different time zone, and hopefully avoiding North American winter because I don't like that very much.
So where's the next place you're traveling?
Good question. In January, I have a one-way ticket booked to Taiwan and then a weekend in Brunei, but rather than it being round trip, it lands me in the Philippines and I'll be there. That's the last ticket I have booked. So
I love it. That's so
I'll
cool.
be in
That's so
Southeast
cool.
Asia for a few months.
I love the open-ended travel booking that you do. I just think it's so cool.
Yeah, thank you. If anybody's listening and wants to do that, make sure there's not a visa law that says that you have to have a ticket out. Don't just decide to show up somewhere that and get there and be like, "Oh, I have to leave also."
I'm always living through your long journeys on Instagram stories where you're doing yoga with the windows open on some beautiful property. I think you were in South America the last time you traveled,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I spent 3 months in South America earlier this year, and some friends and I got a house in Bolivia, and they were all digital nomads as well. So we were like just outside of La Paz in the mountains, and we just
The
worked all
views.
week. Yeah. We like worked all week. The house
I
came with
loved it.
dogs, so it really felt like home. It was great.
I love it. So we could obviously talk travel all day and
Yeah.
we could talk about working and traveling and all of that. But let's go into copy because you have some really unique perspectives. You teach a very unique way. You also have a really cool offer that I definitely want to talk about during this. So let's just get everybody on the same page. How do you define copy?
I think to understand what copy is, you have to understand what copy isn't. And I always think of it like a Venn diagram where copy is on one side and content is on the other, and they do have some overlap. So I always say that content is written for computers and copy is written for people. And what I mean by that is that content is typically longer form and it's meant to be searchable. And it is very important. I'm not saying it's an or, I'm saying it's an and. But content is blog posts, podcast descriptions. Sometimes it's part of your website. That's a place where there's a lot of overlap. Copy is
Mm-hmm.
made for people and it's meant to compel people to take action, which you'll hear me say it copy is so that people buy. But copy is sales pages, emails, because you're never going to search and find an email, right?
Yeah.
Not on Google at least. But then, like I said, there is that Venn diagram in the middle of like, well, if you write copy for your website, you might need it to be SEO friendly. So that's where that crossover is, but that's how I define copy, is that copy compels people to take action.
Ooh, I love that. That's a super, really easy way to just put the two in like buckets, really.
Hmm.
So, one of the things I love about you is how you really simplify not only like copy, but also launches. Like, I remember you blew my mind when you were like, you don't need a long sales page. And I was like, what do you mean? I don't need that like 23 Word document page, like endlessly scrolling, like monstrosity for my copy to sell
Hmm.
a digital product. Can you talk a little bit about your perspectives there?
Yeah. So on one hand, you can
Mhm.
have the 27 scroll long thing. Um, but there's a lot to be said for clarity. And the quicker that you can get your message across is the quicker that somebody's going to understand what you do, if you do it for them, and why they should want to work with you. Like that's the goal. So yes, some people, so let's say that you're rolling out an 8-week program and you know week by week exactly how you're going to take your client from point A to point B. You're going to want to have that because people want to know how much commitment is needed from them. So you want to spell that out through your website or through your sales page. However, I always tell people, so I recently closed on a house and my mortgage document was like,
Congrats.
thank you. My mortgage document was like 50 pages long. That house had a like not multiple commas, but it was, it's a six-figure investment.
Hmm.
Therefore, it was 50 pages telling me exactly what it was that I was getting and when I had my amortization rates for my mortgage, like all of the things. I understand if the fence on the left-hand side of the yard is mine, but on the right-hand side of the yard is not. I needed those details to make that investment. If you're selling something that's a 2-hour program that costs $500 and it's happening next Tuesday, I do not need to know what's happening at minute 57 in this program that you're offering, right? So there's um there's a lot to be taken into consideration, but it's less about the monetary investment that somebody's making upfront and more so about what else are how else are they invested in this, like emotionally and time
Ooh.
wise, etc. Things with commas in the price from a Google Doc. I have purchased, I mean, more or less I picked my house on Zillow, right? So it's not just like the more expensive it is, the longer your sales page has to be. It's how simple is this for people to understand what happens as a result of working with you and how quickly can I get that across?
Ooh, I love that. So, what would you say are the bare minimum somebody can have? And I know that's a very vague question, but
Yeah, I mean, so then it does kind of come into relativity of how big the thing is that they're offering. If it's a freebie, you don't even need a scroll. Like,
hmm.
tell me what it is above the fold, throw a form on the page, tell me why I need it now, and like that's it. If it's, say something between $1,000 and $5,000, I would say at minimum you need the above the fold section to be absolutely brilliant. You need a section immediately following telling me probably three relatively tangible outcomes, which I would call a why section. A lot of people get really stuck in the problem agitation section, and that ends up being like 17 points on pain points. I would
Yeah.
argue that yes, you need to understand people's pain and mention it, but the purpose of the sales page is to position yourself as the solution, not as a long droning part of the problem. So,
Hmm.
some sort of section where it's a problem that immediately transfers to and that's why you should get this from me. That's where you point out your standout factor and then telling them what exactly it is and how it's delivered. Is this a download? Is this a 1-day thing? Is this an 8-week program? Is it coaching? Is it group? Is it self-guided? Really digging into that. You can have an about section, but that about section is about them rather than about you. Um,
Ooh.
and smattering other calls to action throughout that. I'd say that's probably the bare minimum for something that's a little bit more robust.
I like that a lot. So, can we talk a little bit about solution
Hmm.
positioning? Because that's something that, like, I'm somebody that definitely gets stuck in like the, well, there's this problem they're facing, there's that problem they're facing. And I don't think I'm bad at writing the solution part by any means. I think I do an okay job at that. But like that's something that I see a lot of people struggle with. And sometimes when I'm reading sales pages, I'm like, what are you actually trying to tell me this is going to
Mhm.
do for me? Like what's actually in it? Like, so what? Why do I care? What could you tell somebody that's kind of struggling there?
Yeah. So one of the like best and worst exercises that I think every new to business person does is they're told, show your audience that you know them. And how do you do that is you identify their problems. And then you write down all these problems, and then you're like, see, that is your ideal audience. It's not that they're women under 40 with two kids and like missing the travel bug or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It's that their problems are more psychological rather than demographic. And that's good. It's a good place to start. But I challenge people to take that list and just draw lines from each of those perceived problems. So, I always think of it like those commercials from the early 2000s of like, I think it was Zoloft or something, where it's like, do you wake up tired in the morning? Like, do you just feel like whatever? But I
Yeah.
think I think like so often our sales pages come across like that, where it's just like this depressed little guy with an umbrella on the TV, just like womp womp. Um,
Yeah.
so take those pain points and draw a line from each. And this typically takes a little bit of customer surveying, but understanding what their ideal solution is. And don't mistake this for aligning
Mhm.
your solutions with what their ideal solution is. Because if their ideal solution to not being tired every morning is to get more sleep, but your ideal solution that you're positioning is an energy drink, then you're not going to meet your target audience because you only understand their pain and not their desires.
That is a
So,
great differentiator there. Like, I just want
yes.
to like highlight that whole like their ideal solution. Like the sleep one is just so simple and it makes so much sense. Like they want more sleep. They don't necessarily want an energy drink versus your solution and what you're trying to sell. Like I love that. That is so brilliant.
hmm hmm I mean, and it's the same thing. Somebody will say, I'm going to start a group program because I know that I can help so many people. And this one podcast I listened to told me this is the only way to make my business scalable. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, yeah, sure. Group programs and then turn it into a course and like passive income all the way. All you're going to do is run ads and like work 2 hours a week for the rest of your life. Cool. If your people all the way back at the beginning don't feel comfortable in a group setting because they want to work with you one on one, then that whole set of dominoes falls down for now. I'm not saying it's impossible for anyone by any means, but if your clients aren't asking for a group program, then don't give them a group program. So what that language does and having that market research does is it either allows you to change your audience or change your messaging of what your offer is.
Hmm.
Um, so all of that to say, how do we take that from problem to solution? How do you position yourself as the solution? Is yes, you understand like, oh, okay, are you really sick and tired of waking up tired in the morning? Is it affecting your relationship with your spouse and with your work and with your family? Um, Trust me, I get it. I've been there. And, like we don't need six scrolls of like, and this, and you're letting your house chores fall through the cracks because you're too tired at night, and you're just watching TV because you don't have energy to do your hobby. Like, we don't need to continue to drill that home. We need to immediately then say, like, is it as easy as drinking an energy drink to feel vibrant and excited? And then what that's called in marketing is it's called open loop marketing. So our brain likes closed loops. Our brain likes stories that end. Um, but our brain lights on fire when we're taught how to dream. And that's where the most effective marketing takes place, is not closing that loop, is we almost get there. We tell people almost exactly what they're getting, but we light it up with the potential. And those are the same pleasure centers in the brain that light up when making a purchase decision. And because we're not buying the energy drink. We're buying the energy that we will have. We're not
Hmm.
buying the app that's going to help us sleep better. We're buying the better sleep. So it's that potential and those pleasure centers that light up. And when we say every decision, every buying decision is an emotional decision, what we're saying is we need to lean into those positive emotions. It's a carrot and a stick analogy of we have to align ourselves with that solution because that is where the buying decision happens, is in the hope that you're going to solve their problem.
Ooh, that is like so good. I
I
love
paid
the
tens of thousands of dollars for this marketing degree.
It's funny, I have a marketing degree, but we went very like strategy focused. Like there was so much that to learn these things, like we were Googling and learning from like independent teachers, not so much like from the college when I went to school. So let's talk a little bit about um strategic areas maybe on the sales page that we can cause that closed loop and that we can like light up that purchase decision, like point of the brain.
Mhm.
Where on the sales page like could that go?
So I think it starts right above the fold. Um, Too often I see the above the fold start with a question. What we don't want to do, and this is a whole other lesson in sales psychology, is give people decision fatigue and position ourselves as anything other than the authority right away. So a lot of times we'll see something above the fold where it says, what if you could wake up feeling refreshed every morning? What if, another one I see a lot recently, because we're approaching the beginning of the year, is um, as we record this at least,
Yeah.
is what if you could plan your entire Q1 of content in 2 hours, right? Like we see these
Yeah.
what if questions, and it's like 101 version of opening the loop. Um, but when we start with a question, we're actually putting people on the defensive, and what we want to do is position ourselves as an authority and give them the answer. So rather than what if you could, we just change it to you can. You can wake up feeling rejuvenated. You can
And that's very
create two
empowering.
months. It is. It is. And it
Yeah.
positions you as the authority subliminally.
I love that.
Um, so that's, we start that right above the fold. And then that continues. Where I see that tend to devolve is in the problem agitation section, which again, it's good to show people that you understand. We using the content creation example, like, does AI completely overwhelm you
Ooh.
with content creation? You know that there's a million types of content to make, but you're not even sure how to repurpose it and still make it feel authentic. Um, those are real problems that your clients might identify that they have. However, again, that's also a place where we get into that decision fatigue. Do you feel like, and then it's question, 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 rather than showing me that you know me, you
Yeah.
probably have, or you've experienced
Hmm.
decision fatigue at which AI to use and how to use it. You end up in the mini course spiral trying to figure out how to choose one and use it. Yeah, it's asking too many questions diminishes our authority. And how do we then position that where you're aligned with the solution? You say, are you ready to go from decision fatigue over which AI to use to confidently using ChatGPT to generate 10 captions in 2 minutes? I don't use
Yeah.
AI, so this is not a good example for me. But, well, I don't use
I was like
ChatGPT,
wondering.
but
I was like, I'm thinking like I don't know if Sam actually uses anything
yeah,
AI.
no, I really shouldn't have chosen that example, but I ran with it.
It's fine.
But positioning, like, are you ready to stop doing this and start doing this? Like, you can use your problem section to also be your this is the solution section.
So something that personally I've gone back and forth with a lot in my business is outsourcing copy, writing my own copy, something in the middle, templates. There are so many solutions out there these days to copy. How does somebody decide, is this an offer I should hire a copywriter for, or is this something that I do myself? And is there a happy medium there?
Great question. I think that yes, there's a happy medium. So if it is your first launch of something, and if other people are listening and disagree, absolutely reach out because I think it's a good conversation to have. If it is your first launch of something, I will say, and you are a confident speaker of the language that you are launching in, because I do see people outsource earlier to copywriters if they're not native speakers. And I think that that is a really solid strategic move, because a lot of times we make the mistake of sounding robotic on our websites, and that's especially
Mm-hmm.
easy when writing in a different language. Um, so I will say the general rule, like all else equal, is that if it's your first launch, DIY it. If you have proof of concept, you know what you've learned from the previous launch, you think that you can do it better next time around, or that you have data points but aren't sure how you can do it better next time around, that's where you invest the profit from your first launch back into help. Whether that's with a copywriter or otherwise, like find where your weak spots are. Um, but I would say that if it's your first launch, you don't have proof of concept, you are giving a copywriter a task that, yes, I've written for people's first launches. It's just that much harder for us to be successful because we don't have data points on what works or what doesn't any more than you do. And I've seen people, and this gets into a whole mindset thing, but I've seen people give it
Mm-hmm.
to a copywriter because they're not confident in their writing ability. But then if the launch doesn't go well, then it stops being their responsibility and becomes the people that they hired's responsibility for why it didn't go well. And we hate to see that. Like that's where I said it
It
gets
doesn't
into a
feel good.
mindset thing. It
Yeah.
yeah, you have to take extreme responsibility for your success as
Mm-hmm.
an entrepreneur. And that's part of why it is really hard to hire out a copywriter as well. The other thing I'll say on that is when hiring a copywriter, they're typically the first person in and the first person done on your launch team. So, and copywriters, good copywriters, will not have immediate availability. So if you're launching in 5 months from now, now is a good time to start looking for your copywriter because they're going to want to start writing at least 3 months before you launch and be done about 2 months before you launch so that you can then hand your sales page over to a designer. That'll take a couple weeks. Your tech VA is going to have to plug everything in on the back end, and then they may plug back in the final month when you realize that you need to make small changes or pivots. Um, but it seems like an extreme timeline, but the sooner you hire a done for you copywriter, the better. Which leads us to what falls in the middle.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit though about hiring a copywriter and
Mhm,
outsourcing because I've done that and I love hiring a copywriter, but I don't
mhm.
know if it's always like the best
Yeah.
solution. How can we set up our copywriter though for success if we are maybe on our second launch, we're ready for a completely new sales page, we have those data points, we have some testimonials, we have some just general feedback. Maybe we've even got some hot jar data. Like we actually have like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
stuff to hand over to a copywriter. How can we set somebody up for success with that though?
Um, Making that data all super accessible and having it up front is huge. I cannot tell you how many times I will come back to somebody and say, you know, this is
Hmm.
what I wrote, but your audience may say something else. And they're like, oh, I did a survey on that like 3 months ago. Here you go. And it's like, man, this would have been great to have when I was writing it. Because also a lot of times our contracts will say you get it written and then you get revisions. And if we're rewriting things because you didn't give us the information ahead of time, there's going to be friction in that relationship. So
Yeah.
I will say as much data as you have up front. Also, understanding that we're not a magic wand as much as we would like to be. Yes, we are saving you days and days of writing time, and we're making you more money than you would if you were doing this on your own because we do have experience in the industry and sales psychology and all of that behind us. But
Hmm.
um, understanding that it will be hours of your time up front to gather that information, get it to us, have the conversations. Um, you may also want to have a couple of rock star clients on deck, depending on if you're paying your copywriter to do market research and having those not sales conversations, but roots conversations related to things that you have sold in the past. So you might also want to have a couple of those people on deck as oh, you can talk to Victoria. She was a recent graduate of Sam's School of Awesome and would probably have great things to say about the process. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think it's just knowing, having a good idea of what you want up front as well. A lot of copywriters are gonna also strategize with you, so you may think that you
Hmm.
want like 17 sales emails that go to three different lists, but they might actually be able to look at it and say, we can do this differently and better and more strategically.
I love that. So let's go to the complete opposite side of the spectrum. We have the DIYer using a template. How can
Hmm.
somebody really get the most out of templates? And I know like you have templates, you sell templates. There are a
Hmm.
bajillion and 12 on the market at this point.
Yeah,
And then I want to talk about that happy medium. But
yeah.
how can somebody find a good template and what should they be evaluating when they're looking at templates for things like sales pages and emails, of course?
Yeah, yeah. So most of my templates are emails, and I think emails are easy because they're plug and play. They're hard to
Hmm.
buy because they are intellectual property, so they'd be really easy to swipe as well. So a lot of people won't post a mock-up of their email templates because it's just really
Oh,
hard.
good point.
Um, it's another thing if you're shopping for a copywriter, they will typically not share previous emails that they've written for the same reason because they're another client's intellectual property versus sales pages they can post because they were public. So it's difficult to find an
I
email
never thought about
portfolio
that side
from
of things,
from copywriter.
actually.
Yeah. Um, so for a sales page, for any template, it's a good idea before you look at it, because that's going to inform the way that you think about your sales page or email, is to understand the nuance of what it is that you're selling. Um, and that's an elusive thing to say, so let's make it concrete. Going back to, if you're selling something that's an 8-week program, it's a gazillion dollars, and you understand that people need a lot of detail, you need to know that before you look at a template, because you need to know what kind of detail your people need. And if you're buying, I've seen sales page template for sale. Okay, cool. I've seen, there's a copywriter that I really like and respect, and she has such detailed templates. It's sales page template for group coaching program, and I think it's even like qualified by either time or money that it costs. Um,
Okay.
and it's like, that is a hyper specific template. And I think her templates sell for like $400 or $500, but it's
Hmm.
super specific to what you're doing. So, you can, I'm a big fan of bundles. I love grabbing people's templates and stuff that they offer for free. So you can grab just any old sales page template. They're a dime a dozen. You could probably find some for free or low cost.
Yeah.
But the more specific your page is, the better. And also understanding who your audience is, because a lot of people sell to consumers. There'll be people who have full-time jobs or people who support the home and don't earn income outside the home. Those people are going to purchase very differently from small business owners, who are going to purchase very differently from, if it's business to business, you're still selling to a person, but that person might have a COO title in a, $500 million company, are going to purchase very differently. So it's also understanding how people purchase before you just go and grab a template and like slap words on a page.
I love that because I've definitely bought templates and been like super underwhelmed. And it's probably truly like I didn't know what I was buying. I didn't know what I was downloading. And I think a lot of that can actually also apply to hiring a copywriter. Like I've hired big names to write emails for me, and the emails have done worse than emails I've written myself, which
Mhm.
obviously does not feel good, even though I gave them the
Mhm.
same sales page I referenced. Obviously doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
So can we talk about that hybrid between like doing it yourself, maybe leaning on a template and having somebody check our copy?
Hmm. Yeah. So I think it's important to note that hiring a good copywriter is really freaking expensive. Most people will not touch a done for you project for less than 1,500 bucks. Um,
That's been my
Copywriters, I think
experience
services
too.
providers, period, get this like, can you look at something quick for me? like all the time. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's the like, I've studied this for years and so it seems quick, but it's not. But also, like, I'm not going to do market research and all of that for three emails that cost 700 bucks. Like, it's a lot more work than sitting down and writing you a couple of quick emails. A lot of times, small businesses, that's a huge investment. And you have to decide, even in a launch, right? Like, do I just want the emails? Do I want the sales page? Do I want the whole shebang? Um, and when you look at your ROI from a launch or from creating an evergreen product, you have to understand that that's going to eat at your top line. So what I did is I created the middle ground and called it copy on demand, where people who are writing their own copy can come to me and say, okay, Sam, I did this, I did my best, whether they did it from their brains or from a template, or they can come to me and say, hey, I want to write this sales page, what should go on it? Here's the details of what I'm thinking this program is going to be. And we can outline it together. They write it. It's all written by you, but they give it to me and I say, okay, from my hundreds of launches that I've worked on, from my too many pages of emails that I've written, and from what I've seen working recently, because a lot of the data that we Google and get from places that are very reputable, like HubSpot, the data came out in 2021, was collected in 2020, and was done on businesses that are way bigger than a lot of the folks that I
Yeah.
work with. So it's good information. It's just not easily translated to our industry. Um, so they bring it to me and I say, okay, this is what I would change. This is what's working right now based on my real-time experience in the industry. Not only that, but this is why I would change it.
Hmm.
Um, so that you can do it right the first time next time. And it's a happy medium that costs between $200 and $300 a month rather than thousands of dollars. Um,
Yeah.
and you get that expertise, but you on your copy, and you get my eyes on your copy, but you also get um, to be better at writing copy so that you can do it
Yeah.
better next time.
Yeah. It's not just like a Google Doc that you're just crossing things out in. Like what I love about copy on demand, I don't know if you can hear my dog. She just started chirping at me in her sleep. Um, we had your cat in the beginning, my dog chirping. Um, Beautiful audio. One of the things I love about copy on demand is that you don't just say like, oh, well, this could be better. This could be better. It's like, how could this be better? Why could it be better? Behind the cloak, behind the scenes of why to make those changes, which is something I really love. And if I'm not wrong, you'll audit pretty much any copy, right?
Yep. Yeah, anything.
So
Ads, emails, opt-in pages, sales pages,
I think I even had you do
anything.
my like everything page and my resource page for that
Yeah,
affiliate.
somebody sent over actually their feedback form that they send to clients because they weren't getting very good feedback. And we even looked at that because
Ooh,
it's still words that are eliciting a response from people, and she wasn't getting the responses that she wanted. So it was changing the messaging within that. So yeah, anything.
that's a really smart one. I never thought about that one.
It.
Um,
Mhm.
all right. So you've done a whole bunch of copy audits at this point, like through copy on demand. Are there any commonalities that you see, maybe common issues or things that people are really getting right these days?
Ooh, I love that you asked what people are getting right. Um, It's a lot of what I actually previously talked about with nailing the above the fold and making sure that you're positioning yourself as the solution. I think what people get right is they really are digging into what their people's needs are. Where it tends to fall off is understanding how they position themselves as the solution. And again, I think there's a lot behind that. I think there's mindset of we don't want to be salesy. I work with
Hmm.
predominantly people who identify as women. Um, and I think that there's just like a bad rep of like women shouldn't be certain things, and salesy or pushy is one of them, and we really shy away from that. Um, and through copy on demand, I help people understand that if they're not putting the best option in front of people, that they're actually doing them a disservice. Like they're holding them back from solving their problems if they're not positioning themselves, and selling can feel like you are serving them by doing the right thing by your people. So I think that's kind of a double-edged sword of like they do it really well
Yeah.
that they understand their people and they want that relationship, but then it kind of falls off with the solution. Um, the other thing that I repeat often to a point that it's now a training that's within the Copy on Demand membership is understanding why the above the fold section is so important and how to write a really freaking good one. Because basically, your above the fold section is a mini sales page. It tells people what you're
Hmm.
doing and how they can get it if they are your ideal audience. So you have a lot to accomplish above the fold. However, most people spend an average of 7 seconds on a website before deciding whether to bounce or buy. And again, that buy is like buy in, keep scrolling, right?
Yeah.
So 7 seconds. The average American English reader reads easy to read language. So that has to do with like fonts that are easy to read as well as simple words at an average of 4 words per second, which means you have 28 words. 7 seconds at 4 words per second. You have 28 words to help people understand those three things: what you're offering, why they should want it, and how to get it. So you've got call to action, you've got describing that it's an 8-week program that'll help you go
Hmm.
from awful to flawless in, an hour in just 1 hour per week. You've got to get all of that across in 28 words or less, or at least 28 words that people will read.
That is so interesting. I never thought about the speed at which people read and how, I mean, I've
Hmm.
thought about how fonts and stuff like that impact the reader because, like, obviously, I look at websites and if I can't read them, I bounce immediately off that page and go on with my day. But I never really thought about like the speed at which somebody reads and how truly important that above the fold is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Is there anything you really see people failing at with their copy right now?
The thing that has really stood out to me a lot recently is that decision fatigue of asking a
Hmm.
lot of questions. Because again, you don't think about making your people defensive accidentally when they read your copy, but it's again going back to the example of like, are you exhausted by XYZ? And it's like, yes, you're positioning it as a yes or no question, but then it's usually followed up with like, are you ready for a better solution? Da 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 da. And it's like, you need to
It's
position
not really
yourself as
pre-qualifying anymore.
right, exactly. People will pre-qualify themselves. If I'm reading something that says you need diapers that don't get soggy, like I don't have kids. I do not care about that. When you come at me as a position of authority in potty training, I will I will self-qualify. I will see myself out because that is irrelevant. You don't have to position it as a question for people to qualify themselves.
I love that. So let's talk a little bit about how you've launched Copy on Demand because you've done some really cool stuff over the year with things like copy audits before the first launch. We did a whole bunch of, well, we did one, but I know you've done them over the year of like collaborating with other people and doing like a one-off
Mhm.
training, like pitch free training just to grow your list.
Mhm.
And most recently, you did like above the fold audits, which are
Yes.
those core, the beginning of the page, like we just talked about.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've launched Copy on Demand and what you've learned?
Yeah, for sure. So my very first launch was invite only. I had an idea for what copy on demand could look like. I did put it in a Google Doc and I reached out to people that I thought could use it. I reached out to 12 people and 7 people joined. And I said, this is a 3-month commitment. Um, you'll be billed monthly, but after that, we're done. No big deal. So that's how I did it. There were 7 people. I asked 12 people to join, and 7 people joined. So that was definitely my highest rate of
Which is
people who
great.
joined. That was great.
Yeah.
Of those 7 people, 4 of them are still with me. Um, then, when I had figured out what was exhausting, what I loved, what they were asking for, because again, I was getting a lot of feedback. I was asking monthly for feedback during those 3 months. I then launched and leaned heavily on my affiliates. I am a huge stan for Thrivecart. I love Thrivecart. I moved everything to
I
Thrivecart.
love Thrivecart
In
too.
that time, it's all on Thrivecart Learn now. And I reached out to my affiliates and I organized the crap out of my affiliates because my list at the time was less than 1,000 people. Um, so I knew that I didn't have a
Wow.
huge pool to launch to, so I was going to use other
Hmm.
people's pools. Um, so I leveraged my affiliates and I organized the heck out of them. I had an affiliate mixer, and some of those people ended up on each other's podcasts, and they're each other's affiliates, and they go to conferences
Yeah.
together now. Like, that was great. So really creating that relationship. Um, and then I provided them with all of the swipe copy, all of the graphics, all of the things. And then I followed up, I think, without being pushy, of, like, do you want to do a live together? Here's this, like, or I would see their post and realize that they didn't have the link attached, and I would just, like, so it was still intensive on my end, but I had so much social proof on my side. I think is the really big differentiator when
Yeah.
launching with affiliates is that I had the vote of the people who were helping me launch. So that was launch number two. Launch number three was a huge flop. It was at the end of June, and I think in our industry, the school year really impacts buying habits.
Yes.
And people just weren't thinking
I feel
about,
that.
yeah, people weren't thinking about their launch. And again, like I don't have kids, so it wasn't something I was thinking about. I was like, oh, it's
Hmm.
before I go on vacation. This is a great time for me and not for my audience. I
Yeah.
also didn't lean as heavily on affiliates that time because I got in my head about I don't want to bother my affiliates every 3 months. They have their own stuff to launch. And I should say, yes, I was launching at a 3 month cadence, but copy on demand when you join is indefinite. It was just like when it made sense for me to launch, which clearly when it
Yeah.
makes sense for me isn't always best for my audience. Um,
Which is a good lesson in general.
it is, it is. And
And we've all learned.
the average person spends like it's hard to tell right now because I'm about a year into it, but like I
Hmm.
said, I've still got four originals from last January with me. And the average person has been spending about 6 or 7 months in. Um, and then I think they just like either one, grow their confidence, or two, and this is probably on me and my own marketing within the program of like it may or may not, I don't know, I need to look into it, but it might become like white noise of they just don't need it. But I'll say my best members see me as an extension of their team, and they know that just because they have access to me every week doesn't mean that they need access to me every week. It's like you're not going to put your gym membership on pause when you go on vacation for 2 weeks. Like
It's the same
same
thing.
same thing, right? It's
Yeah.
meant to be there alongside you. Um, so that launch, what were my tactics? Basically, to my email list. I had grown my email list by over 1,000 people in those 6 months, and I was like, I have all these new people
That's
that
a
I can
great
launch
growth.
to. It's been a really great year for my email list and vanity numbers at least because nobody bought,
Yeah.
well, a few people bought in June. Um, then I kind of like relaunched with a couple emails a month and a half later when all the kids were in school, and that combined was a good launch. And then, um, oh, and my launch event for those things. So in March, my launch event that everybody was pointing to was a copy review by me. It was very time intensive, but it had a 17% conversion rate because people got to see what it was like to get a copy review from me.
Yeah, that's the one I really participated in. I
Hmm.
remember going hard as an affiliate for that one.
Yeah. Hmm. However, I realized it was time consuming for me, so what I did was um, in the June and August launch, so I only did it in June and then relaunched to these people 6 weeks later, was
Hmm.
I changed it to just above the fold because I realized all the problems were happening above the fold. Well, not all of them, but like a lot of them could be
But yeah.
sorted above the fold. So it was an above the fold review one-on-one instead. However, I had to launch on weeks that I had like no projects because it was taking like 40, 50 hours to complete all those copy reviews.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. And as it turns out that both times we had family emergencies during those weeks. So the first launch, we flew to Austin in the middle of the week, and I was like working around family things. And then in June, we didn't have to fly, but we still had some family stuff going on. So
Stuff. Yeah.
so it was a very hands-on launch, but again, you don't hear of people having a 17% conversion rate from brand new leads. Um,
Not at all.
so
That's
that was
amazing.
great. Yeah. So then the final launch that I did not do any free reviews because I realized how time intensive they were and just launched to my email list. This was in September. And that one was harder to track because I didn't have brand new leads because I didn't do a launch event.
Hmm.
Well, my launch event was that the week of my birthday, I gave out one template a day for free and I had people register. So I did build my email list that week, but only by about 100 people. So it's hard to track who came from the launch event and joined and who had been in my email list and was just kind of waiting for a good deal because then for my 32nd birthday, I offered it at 32% off for a week. And that launch did all right. So ultimately, that was a lot of marketing tactics. So I used affiliates and freebies and giveaways and summits and all kinds of things to build my list. But ultimately, it was the affiliate program that did the
Hmm.
best. And for it being the first year and doing all that experimenting, I can confidently say that's where my marketing efforts will be focused moving forward, is in like collaborations and affiliations.
I love that. And you shared like so many good little like tidbits. Like you learned June wasn't a good time for your people, which I saw
Hmm.
the same thing this summer. Like for me, June and July were like crickets, but August was when like I started to see some traction. You shared 17% conversion rate, which is amazing. I personally love how you approach things so uniquely. Like you're not like, oh, let's do a challenge, which like I love a good challenge, but like a challenge is time intensive for your people. Like you actually took that and demonstrated how incredible it is to have like a copywriter literally in your back pocket that can edit whatever, or not edit. I mean, you're really providing like feedback and auditing. You're not really like rewriting something for anybody. But how powerful that still is. And then like that's what ultimately sold for you. And affiliates, I'm sure help definitely, but
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Cool.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add about copy on demand?
Um, just that it's so great and it's so fun. It's so
It
fun
is. It really
to
is so great.
it's fun to be a part of. It's fun to deliver. And I think it's one of the fastest and least expensive ways to move the needle sales wise, um,
Hmm.
for people who aren't ready to invest in a copywriter on like, especially on a consistent basis. You can still hire a copywriter on a one-off and keep copy on demand to like just be there. I think that's where it's
Yeah.
the most powerful.
Yeah. I love that. I've been in it. I love it. I'm just temporarily out of it while I'm in like a quieter time in my business. But like, I loved copy on demand. I tell everybody about it. Every time the door is open, I have like specific clients that I'm like, you should check this out. The time is here. The time is now. I love it. Honestly, like I'm a Sam stan. Like I'm like, go Sam, go copy on demand, which I truly like. I think it fits a really unique spot for that person that is in a really big growth stage in their business.
Hmm.
Like when I'm launching things over and over and over again, I was sending you like a different sales page like every other week when I was in there
Hmm.
and different emails every single week because I was like trying different offers and trying different messaging for the offers. Like that was just a really great resource for me. So
Hmm.
I love
Hmm.
it.
And I remember with
Um,
you specifically as we looked at something and it was like, this doesn't sound like your previous stuff. Like what went differently here? And it was, I remember you came back to me and
I forgot about that.
you were like, you got to know my business and my brand voice relatively passively because I was just looking at your stuff once a week, as I'm looking at plenty of people's stuff once a week.
Hmm.
But I was still able to identify that like kind of nuance for you too. And it's like if I see it, your people will see it. And
Yeah.
it's stuff like that that can be really impactful for your audience.
Surprisingly, I didn't use AI for that, but I remember I was honestly in just a really weird headspace when I was trying to
Hmm.
write that. Which your mindset really affects your writing as well. And that definitely
Yeah,
showed up for me. Total off topic. Are you
sure.
seeing a lot of people send you like AI written stuff that you're needing to edit, or do you have like a hard like write this yourself rule?
So no, I don't have the rule and nobody has outright said it. However, I've looked at things and again, I have a lot of folks who English is their second or third language. And it's like sometimes it's like, did Google Translate write this? But
Ooh.
I have asked people, I'm like, did either like who told you this was a good idea or did AI write this? Um, because it'll oftentimes it comes off as really vague of like
Mm-hmm.
there's no real solution positioned. Um, and I think there's a time and a place for AI. I mentioned previously, I don't really use it. I use other AIs. I don't really use ChatGPT. Um, and not for my writing. But I think it's like all of these things are only as good as you prompt them to be. And therefore, if you're already taking the time to write things out and tell somebody else, aka this machine, what to write, um, and you're not positioning the solution in your prompt, then you wouldn't be positioning the solution if you were to take the time to just write it yourself anyway. So I think, am I seeing it a lot?
Yeah.
He's telling me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's as good as you tell it to be, and if you're
It's a
going to
new
take the time
thing.
to write it, then you might as well just write it and send it to me and see how we can work together to make it better.
100%. Yeah, I love that. So let's do our rapid fire to wrap up the episode. So, just five quick marketing questions. You can answer them however your heart desires. But what is your favorite marketing that you've seen recently?
Affiliates and collaborations.
Anybody in particular that has done like a really great job with their affiliates?
Um, Gosh, I should have come armed with examples. But I have seen Jordan Gill talking a lot about it. But I don't think I could name a specific collab that I've seen recently.
Yeah, no worries. Love it. A strategy that flopped for you and what you learned from that.
Ads. I'm not even saying ads are bad. I'm saying I tried them about a year ago. Nothing happened. It was an expensive lesson.
Hmm.
That's fine, right? Like we have to have good
Yeah.
funnels before we can run good ads. Tried again this year, and my Facebook account is still suspended because it got hacked. And apparently, Facebook is taking like 10 to 12 months to recover hacked accounts after they close them down. So
Okay,
it's
two-factor authentication, everybody. Like,
yeah,
protect your online assets.
yeah, it's not going well for me. I think the universe is telling me that I do not need to pay for publicity.
Oh my gosh. What is a strategy you're excited to try next in your marketing?
I am excited to experiment more within affiliate marketing. I've heard about email sponsorships. I've
Hmm.
heard about just various ways to do collaborations, and that's definitely what I'm leaning into for 2024.
Love it. What do you see in your space that you love or hate?
Um, in my,
And it can just be the online space too if you
yeah,
want.
what I see in the online space is this collaboration over competition, and I love that as a concept. I'm not loving the way that I'm seeing people starting to like name names for the sake of naming names a little bit more because there is a lot of paid affiliation. So there's a difference between
Hmm.
plugging something that you love and plugging something because you were paid for it. Like it's more of the sponsorship thing. Um, so it's like, yeah, collaboration over competition, but also like how much did you pay? And you can kind of start to smell that a mile away. And I think that's the next layer of this is that it started organically, then it started to be paid, and then people are going to start to see through it. Um, an example of that is people can pay to be in like Forbes and get publicity in that way.
Yeah.
Um, I think people are starting to recognize what paid media is, and what that
Hmm.
looks like. So I'm loving like the shout outs and the affiliations, but I think the double-edged sword to that is like the inauthentic ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point there. What is one marketing tactic that you previously loved but have since abandoned?
Um, I did a lot of, I called them like no bullshit workshops. You and I did one together, and it's not
Hmm.
that I've abandoned it, it's that I just haven't done it recently. But it was a really great way to just get information out into the world and do it for free. And what did I call it? No pitch webinars. That's what I was calling them.
Yep.
And it's like at the end, we're like, this isn't a lead magnet. This isn't a launch event. I just feel like more
It's
people
a
need to know
free
about
thing.
this. Yeah. And it was great. It was a good way to co-brand. It was a good way to get information out there and build authority and show up for my people. And I traveled a lot over the summer and my schedule got weird and I just lost my steam for it. I felt like I was doing it almost too often and it'll come back. It's not abandoned. It's just
It's
alone.
pause.
Yeah, it's just out there.
Yeah,
It's floating. Somebody
I
else can
loved
do it.
this. Yeah, we did the Beyond the Bundle.
Mm-hmm.
And I know
That
I
was a good
attended a
one.
couple of yours that you did with other people too, but I really liked that Beyond the Bundle, which
Mm-hmm.
maybe we should bring back.
We could bring it back.
With bundle season, maybe we should bring that back. Well, Sam, thank you so much for spending the last almost hour with me. Tell us where we can find you online. And of course, I will have everything linked in the show notes and including a link to Copy on Demand down below.
Mhm. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at nomad.copy. My full name is on LinkedIn, Samantha Burmeister, and don't try and find me on Facebook because my account's suspended. I didn't do anything wrong.
And your website is just nomadcopy.com, right?
Nomadcopyagency.com.
Nomad Copy Agency. Perfect. Thank you so much, Samantha, for being here, and everything will be linked down below.